All right. All right. All right. What's going on, everybody? What's going on real quick? Let me I want to make sure this is not too loud, but um okay, so I had to bring this to you. I believe this is going to help a lot of people because it deals with what I believe so many people are dealing with right now. And we're living in a time where people just don't know what they're going to do. They don't know, which direction to turn. And you pray and you're asking God for direction, but you're just not hearing what the next steps are, right? And so I was reading through Genesis chapter 37 today, this morning, and man, listen, principles were jumping out at me like never before. And I said, man, I have got to share this. And so I wanted to jump on here and really share this with you. Hopefully, this is going to help you guys. To be able to break through some areas that you may be dealing with right now, and again, you're probably questioning like, why is certain things happening, and or why is things not happening, and I mean, it's life, right? So I want to make sure that I'm mindful of your time, but I definitely want to encourage you that if you are watching this right now, I believe that this message is for you. So what I want you to do is take a few minutes, even if you have to pause this video. I promise you, you are going to want to take some notes on this, because it is really, really mind blowing when you look at where we are right now, right? So, okay, so what I want to talk about is what I'm calling the 7 keys to leverage the pit. The 7 keys to leverage the pit. And honestly, this came directly out of Genesis chapter 37 through 50. So you want to take some notes on this, okay? So what do I mean by the pit? Again, some of you guys know that I also have a podcast called The Lion's Den. And, it's very similar, but the pit, what I'm talking about now, it refers to those moments or those circumstances in your life that obviously you didn't plan for, right? The circumstances in your life when those that you hold dear, or those that came that were the closest to you, seem to kind of stab you in the back, right? For lack of better words, and they did things to harm you. How do you break through those moments? How do you overcome the challenges of being in a pit? Now, the pit can be finances, right? The pit can be your health. The pit can be relationships. The pit can be at your job or your business or whatever it is. How do you leverage the pit? And I want to talk specifically from the perspective of leadership, right? How do leaders leverage what I call the pit? And so I want to bring this again to the forefront because this is so relevant to where we are. But I want to ask you a question before we go here. I want to ask you a question before we go into the 7 keys, right? If you know the story of Joseph and how he was sold into slavery by his brothers, and what happened as a result of him going through this time or this season through this pit, I want to ask you something. And I wrote this down so I don't miss this, right? But can you imagine what Joseph may have been thinking when his brothers, watch this, pulled him from the pit to sell him into slavery, not even throwing him into the pit, right? I, this may be just my, my thought process, but I'm thinking like, okay, Joseph, he's a little brother, so he probably used to them, you panning on him. Some of y'all don't even know what panning is. Today they call it bullying. Listen, we used to call it panning, right? But today, not today, I'm sorry, but Joseph probably was used to, big brothers picking on him and stuff like that. So, to kind of throw him in the pit probably wasn't that big of a deal. It was, but it wasn't. Um, but my thing is this: imagine how Joseph may have felt when the brothers actually took him out of the pit, right? After throwing him in, took him out, and then made a decision to sell him into slavery. I want you to really, really contemplate that, right? And if you are, again, just catching this, I want you to even comment below. How would that have made you feel? right? Those that are closest to you took you, threw you in the pit where you couldn't escape, and then they actually helped you out of the pit or got you out of the pit, and but they sold you into slavery. I want you to really, really contemplate that thought process, right? As we go into the 7 keys to leverage the pit. So let's go into this real quick. In order to leverage the pit, okay, in order to leverage the pit, the first key that I want to share with you is this. Let me move this out the way real quick. Let me move this out the way because I don't want this to distract you. Okay, so the first key is what you know is what you know, but what you know is not all that there is to know, right? Write it down. Write it down. I'm going to give you a second to write this down. As a leader, you are very mindful of the fact that what you know is what you know, but what you know is not all that there is to know. Okay. For example, you may say, how in the world am I getting this out of Joseph's story, right? You have to remember before Joseph went to his brothers and told him of his dream, he first received the dream that his brothers one day will, quote unquote, bow down to him, right? Now, if you know the story, you know that that was true. Things began to happen, and we'll get into it in a little bit. But what you know is what you know, but what you know is not all that there is to know. Watch. So Joseph knew that he was going to have for lack of better words, he knew that he was going to have this dominion and that his brothers would be able or will eventually bow down to him. What he did not know is what comes as a prerequisite for him to live in that destiny. Write it down. What you know is what you know, but what you know is not all that there is to know. Is it possible that Joseph, like you, like me, if we knew what was coming on the other end of certain decisions that we make, would we still move forward into decisions? If we knew that trusting God at a higher level required us to go into a pit, how many of us would actually go through the process and still trust God? Or would we continue to try to orchestrate things on our own? Will we continue to try to give birth to our very own Ishmaels? That's a whole nother teaching. We'll get to it one day. But I want you to think about that, okay? As a leader, you know what you know, but what you know is not all that there is to know. There's more that we need to learn, which leads us into point number 2. I told you I'm not going to be long, okay? But it leads us into point number 2. Let me bring this up for you real quick. Point number 2 says this. As leaders, all great leaders humble themselves and acknowledge what they don't know. They acknowledge what they don't know. Why is this important? Because in order for you to leverage the pit of your life, the circumstances that creates the pit in your life, you have to be open and humble enough to know that you don't know everything that you need to know, right? And what you don't know, you know that which you don't know. I want you to process this. What you don't know, you know that which you don't know. What am I saying? You know, or you're humble enough as a leader to say, hey, listen, I still need some work in this area, right? In Joseph's situation, I believe that he didn't know he didn't know that his brothers was going to sell him into the pit, right? However, I believe he failed to acknowledge that his brothers were jealous of him. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, this is probably going to resonate with some folks because right now you're surrounded by people that you know feel some kind of way about you, not because you've done anything wrong to them, but probably because they see you making progress in your life and they envy the success that you are having or have had. And so they are plotting right now on how they can orchestrate a pit for you. So, when you know that, right, as a leader, when you know that, you humble yourself and you acknowledge the fact that you what you don't yet know. Are y'all with me? Okay, so that's the second point. Second point, all great leaders humble themselves and they acknowledge what they don't know. Now, the other side of that is because you are humbling yourself to acknowledge what it is that you don't know, you are intentional about figuring out what it takes in order to go to the next level. You're willing to figure out what you need to learn so that that thing that you don't know is no longer fitting in that category. Does that make sense? So you can learn anything. I was having a conversation with our son last night, and I was sharing with them. I was showing them the my cap and gown for my graduation coming up, when I completed the doctorate, right? And they looked at me and they said, "Daddy," they said, "why is this so important to you?" Literally, they asked me, "Why is this so important to you?" And I said, "Because I wanted you guys to see, let me bring this off. I wanted you guys to see that anything you set your mind to, you can make happen. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve, but you also have to do the work in order to learn new things, because what you know is not all that there is to know." Are y'all hearing this? Okay. All right. Let's go to the next point. Go to the next point. If you are going to leverage the pit as a leader, you must approach the circumstances, whether it's good or bad. Okay. As leaders, you must approach the circumstances, whether good or bad, from the mindset of what they're allowed to learn from now or for now or later. All leaders acknowledge this. Okay. They they approach circumstances, whether they're both good and bad, they approach it from this mentality, from this mindset, from this awareness that what they're allowed to go through at the moment is for the ability to learn for either now or sometime later in the future. Okay, what you are going through, or let me say it this way, and you probably heard it, but I want to repeat it. What you are allowed to go through is I want to jump ahead, but what you're going through, you're allowed to go through it for a couple reasons, right? It can be for something that you're experiencing now, or it can be for something that you will experience later, but it goes deeper than that you're going to see in another point here in a second. But all leaders, when they're leveraging the pit that they experience in life, they leverage it from this approach, understanding that, again, whether it's good or bad, it's for now or it's for later. So in other words, what they're going through is not done in vain. Is this making sense? It's not done in vain. And so they look at it completely different than someone that will look at it from the perspective of, woe is me all the time, right? It's not about being woe is me. As a leader, you have to identify, like, what is the purpose behind this pit? Why am I going through this? I thought I did everything right. I'm not doing anybody wrong and all that. Y'all get what I'm saying? Like, I know I'm not the only one that's been there. It's like, man, why in the world is all this crap happening to me? I did a video not too long ago, and it was titled "God is Faithful but Life Sucks Right Now." Right, go back and watch that. It's on the YouTube channel. Go back and watch that, and I talk about the very misconceptions that we have when it comes to trusting God. There's a part that we have to play, right? It doesn't mean that God is not trustworthy. I would be a fool to even throw that out there, right? God is very trustworthy, but he allows things to happen because there's a purpose behind why certain things need to happen in your life. Is that making sense? So let's go to point number 4. Point number 4 says this. Okay. As a leader that's seeking to leverage the pit, leaders are driven by the assignment. They're driven by the assignment instead of buckling under the pressure. Think about this. Joseph was sold into slavery by his very own blood brothers. Okay. And what you will remember, or some of you that have read this, again, go look at Genesis 37 through chapter 50, okay? And it literally lays this out. But Joseph went through some stuff. He went through some fire, even after, going into a high ranking. He was still going through some things where the Pharaoh's wife, Potiphar's wife, actually tried to seduce your boy and get him to do some things, right? But he resisted, and even in that moment, he had to make a decision, right? Is he going to stay true to the assignment, or will he buckle under the pressure? I remember One time we were at a men's meeting, and our pastor asked us if we were in his situation, how many of us would have buckled under the pressure, how many of us would have gave in. And of course, no man is going to sit there and raise the hand. um it was just really interesting to see, right? Or to have that conversation. And I would even ask you, even as a leader, right? If you had to make a decision, or forced or seem to be forced to make a decision that goes against your values, that goes against the principles of God, if you believe in God, if you had to make a decision that went against everything that you stood for, would you stay focused on the assignment, or would you buckle under the pressure? We call that a pit, right? When you're caught between a decision, do you go left, do you go right, right? Do you stay the course and go forward? You have to make that decision. But all great leaders, they're driven by the assignment. Okay, they're driven by the assignment instead of buckling under the pressure. Let's go to the next point. Next point. Leaders view oppositions. Oh my goodness, don't miss this one. Oh my goodness. Leaders view all opposition as measurements of growth and benchmarks of influence for a greater purpose. We know that every situation, every pit that we have an opportunity to experience is for the purpose of growing in who we are created to be, but it's also a benchmark of influence. Here's the thing. I remember a teacher from high school shared this with me. Mr. Bean, if you watching this, I never forgot this conversation, but he shared a truth with me, and he told me, because he started to see me kind of sway off and try to hang out with people that were not of the best influence. Now, thank God that he brought me back in, but he saw me kind of swaying over a little bit. And he said, listen, he said, never ever forget that someone is always watching. Someone is always watching. And I didn't understand. I did not understand what he meant at the time, until again, I started to realize that more and more people that was younger than myself were coming to me and asking me for advice, and they wanted to hang around and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, it got me. It finally hit me, right? So when we talk about benchmarks of influence as a leader, people, believe it or not, are watching to see how you manage the opposition. They're looking to see how you function and press through the pit. They're looking to see how you respond or react. I did a training on that. As a matter of fact, I even wrote about it in my books. But we're talking about using the opposition as measurements of growth and benchmarks of influence. Okay. Now, let's go on to point number six. Point number six. Point number six is this: leaders reject the need to hold grudges. I'm gonna let that sit with you for a second. Let me just hold on, hold on. Leaders reject the need to hold grudges. Let's be real. Let's be real about this, right? I believe Joseph had every reason to sit up here and just sit in the cut and just wait for the day that his brothers would come back. Here's what's interesting. He knew they were coming back, right? He knew it. He saw it in a dream. He knew they were coming back. And when he was reintroduced to his brothers didn't even know who he was. He knew who they were, but they didn't know who he was. At any given moment, Joseph could have snapped his fingers and said, you know what? Yeah, my turn. Let me go ahead and give you this work, because y'all sold me into slavery because y'all was jealous because Pops rock with me more than he rock with y'all, right? He gave me the tunic and the coat of many, many colors, and y'all hated on your own brother, right? So you know what? Boom. It's my turn now. Get him, get him, get him. He could have called a whole bunch of guards over to just take them out one by one, but he didn't do that. He didn't do that, right? Here's what's interesting. What I saw in this passage of scripture, in this story of Joseph, was that although he could have held grudges against his brothers, what he did was he replaced that with a heart posture to uplift them. right? And put them in position to really be able to survive from that moment forward. Not only was he putting them in position to survive, but he was putting them in position to never have another need in life, right? So, is it possible that the pit that you are allowed to experience right now is for the purpose of someone else needing what you are experiencing right now? They need to see you get through it. They need to see you win, because in order for them to win, you have to get through this, right? You have to get through this. This is a big one. Leaders reject the need to hold grudges by replacing it with a heart to uplift those who have caused them harm. It's not an easy thing to do. Please don't misunderstand me, okay? It is not an easy thing to do. I've been there. I have been there. I know what it feels like for people to turn their backs on me. I know what it feels like for those that you hold dear to just look at you like you are nothing. I know what it feels like to be rejected. I know what it feels like to be put in front of a multitude of people and then just embarrassed and just blamed and accused of all of this stuff. I know what it feels like. But however, I also know what it feels like to continue to move along the path that God has established for me, and allow those same people to see the success. And when they were ready to reach out, I was available to help them get through their own drama or their own mess or their own pit that they were going through. I believe that God was more pleased with that than me holding grudges and saying, okay, yeah, it's my turn. I know listen, I know that I could have at any moment exposed and just destroyed some folks. But that's not my heart. That's not my posture. I won't get anything out of that. And more so than that, the people that are connected to those very people may not be able to overcome the challenges that they were or are going to go through in life. So do not hold grudges, family. Do not hold grudges. All leaders understand that holding grudges is never a good thing. Last point. Leaders accept that the pit was set for a reason greater than themselves. Okay. All leaders accept the truth that the pit was set for a purpose that's much greater than themselves. As painful as it may be sometimes, as uncomfortable as it is, as unfair as it may seem, you are going through what you're going through for a reason. Okay. I'm not saying that it's quote unquote fair. I'm not saying that God is putting this stuff on you. What I am saying is that you are capable of getting through it. You have what it takes to break through whatever it is that you're going through, because you've already been equipped with what you need in order to get through it. Okay. But you have to endure the pit and use it as leverage for something greater than yourself. And you will see how when you do that, things will begin to unfold for you. Relationships will begin to be restored, and or new relationships will begin to be formed to help you get to and excel past where you are currently. Okay. So I have to get out of here. I got to go and pick up the kids, but I definitely wanted to get this out to you because it was on me heavy. It was on me super, super heavy, and I could not shake it. So I wanted to make sure that I get this to you. Listen, if you have not connected with me on any of these social media platforms, I want to make sure that you do that, because you see me looking down, but because I want to make sure that this thing is available for you. But um, catch me on all social media platforms. If you're watching this on Facebook, you already found me. Of course, YouTube, you already found me. Instagram, all the tags are at Dr. Mike L. Lewis. Or I was about to say .com, at Dr. Mike L. Lewis. Okay. You can find me on all of those platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I'm all there. All right. So listen, if you're interested in private coaching, I have opened up my Face the Roar intensive. I want to see if I can bring this up for you guys, because some of you have reached out to me and asked about it. And I do want to make sure that this is available to you. But let me bring this off the screen real quick. I'm sorry, family. Let me bring this off. Okay. So If you have not done so, I want you to go to MikeLewisInc.com, and I want you to schedule a 101 time with me at what we call the Lions Table. All right. And I want to brainstorm with you to see how we can take you from where you are to where you desire to be. I realize something about myself, and that is I'm called to those individuals that have hid behind the unspoken trauma in their life, right? And when you hear the word trauma, a lot of times people associate that with, all negative things, but trauma doesn't have to be, abuse or anything like that, but it's just something that you've experienced in your lifetime that has caused you and or I to break away from going all in on what we have been called to do. And so I want to make sure that I help you chart a path to breaking past that so you can reach your true potential. All right. So I want you to go to MikeLewisInc.com, and I want you to schedule a seat at the table of the Lions Table. All right. Or you can simply scan this QR code. But I'm going to get off of here, family. Listen, I want to know what point resonated with you. If I went too fast, hey, go back, watch the replay. But by all means, listen, share this message. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we have so many people right now that are facing these challenges, and they just don't know how to leverage the pit that they're going through so they can break through to the other side. And I want to help you be able to do that. As a matter of fact, I remember something that a former pastor used to say all the time. And he says, listen, you take the bricks that people throw at you and you take those to build a bridge so that they can cross. And whether you threw a brick at me or not, that's not the point. I want to help you. I want to help you go and get across the bridge so you can become everything that you've been destined to become. So with that, family, I love you. I appreciate you. And I am looking forward to meeting with you at the Lions Table. All right. So with that, as always, you already know how I do it. When you are living in your purpose, there's no such thing as competition. Until next time, God bless.